Welcome back. May 23rd is the date the Biden administration has set to end the border policy known as Title 42. It was first enacted by President Trump in a response to COVID. Passed as a public health rule due to the coronavirus pandemic, Title 42 essentially turns asylum seekers away right at the border immediately. Once the directive is lifted, the thousands of migrants that have been camped in northern Mexico will have the chance to enter the United States and make their asylum claims in country. Since the Biden administration announced its plan earlier this month, we've seen plenty of negative reactions from plenty of lawmakers, including a growing number of members from the president's own party who think the potential of more border crossings may be bad politics in an election year. But are those concerns grounded in reality? Steve Kornacki is at the big board with some new polling on Title 42, some insight into how the border issue is playing with voters right now. And, Steve, I can tell you the conventional wisdom that's out there that this is one of those that swing voters seem to look like Republicans on the issue of immigration. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what the numbers are certainly suggesting. Let's take you through what we've got here from our friends at Morning Consult here. And on the bottom line question here that Morning Consult's asking, the removal of Trump-imposed COVID border controls, Biden's move, as you're explaining it, to roll those back. Here it is. Overall, 35% support Biden rolling back those border controls. 54% oppose it. I think it's notable when you look at the question that Morning Consult's asking, they are including Trump's name in it. We've seen so many poll questions in the past where the mere mention of Trump's name creates that polarization, that near 50-50 polarization. But even saying that this is a Trump policy that Biden's trying to roll back, you got 35% saying they supported, a majority, 54% saying they oppose it. Now, we could break it down a couple different ways here. First, there is the partisan divide. Democrats mostly in favor of this, Republicans almost universally opposed, but there's that independent number there, 53-33 opposed among independents. Also, I think notably, if you break this down by race and ethnicity, I think what's most striking here is among Hispanic voters, it's close to a 50-50 issue. In the Morning Consult poll, it comes back 44 support, 40 oppose among Hispanic voters. No clear preference one way or the other there among Hispanic voters. And then, Chuck, last week, we were here talking about 4 key voting groups. We were talking about based on gender and education being the defining fault lines. We asked Morning Consult how this polls among those 4 groups. So check this out. Here you go. Men with, without a college degree, women with, without a college degree. The numbers don't look that different. And in fact, if we said last week, if you remember, there was one group that really did seem like the swingiest of these 4. It was this group, women without a degree. And actually, that's where you see the most opposition here, 29-57 in these Morning Consult numbers.
Boy, I've seen it. You see it with independents. You see it there. So now you understand. This explains why, whether it's Maggie Hassan or Mandela Barnes or Mark Kelly, I mean, we've just sort of gone the array of Democratic Senate candidates. Beto O'Rourke running for governor. Yeah. I mean, this seems to be across the board. Beto O'Rourke, part of that crew of presidential candidates that arguably took the Democrats down this bad messaging path on immigration just 3 years ago.
And as you say, we just take a look here at some of these Democrats who are up this year. And the divide here in terms of their public statements, it's a question of, like Maggie Hassan, you mentioned, actually signing on to that Republican legislation that would block the Biden administration from doing this. Somebody like Catherine Cortez Masto out in Nevada, she's saying she's opposed to the move. She hasn't signed on to that legislation. So it's almost a question right now among so many of these Democrats, not so much are they going to say they're opposed to it, but Republicans are going to try to force them to back that with actions. Who's going to do that, and who's going to resist that additional step?
Well, and the talking point of the morning is, if you've extended the mask mandate for flights, why aren't you worried about a COVID issue with the border? I tell you, that seems to be a hard one to explain if you're in the Biden camp here.
Well, and that's what the polling is showing here. And then that's part of what that legislation that Hassan signed on to is saying. You don't do away with Title 42 until you've done away with the public health emergency first, and then you come up with a plan. Don't have any polling on that in particular, but Maggie Hassan up for re-election, obviously, in a very close state. Mark Kelly in Arizona, they feel comfortable with that positioning on it.
That's for sure. Well, sadly, COVID appears to be on the uptick, at least in the Northeast. I have a feeling that May 23rd date is not set in stone. Steve Kornacki at the big board for us. Steve, thank you.